Canadian missing child case comes to a heartbreaking end in the United States. Also, accusations surfacing that officials in the Obama administration made up the Russian collusion narrative. Here with more details about these stories and so much more is Foreign Affairs correspondent Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Lisa, this one a little tragic here. This story to start off with: a 9-year-old Canadian girl has been found dead in upstate New York after her father claimed that she was kidnapped. But it looks like authorities later identified inconsistencies in her father's account of events and the timeline that he provided. And so now New York State Police are saying that there is no indication that an abduction, a kidnapping even happened. Lisa, this is a tragic, heartbreaking end to an Amber Alert. Do you have any more details to provide there?
Yeah, it's horrific, Jeanette. This morning, we're just looking at further investigations into the father and into, as you said, the story that did not add up. Law enforcement did put out an Amber Alert for this missing 9-year-old girl, beautiful little girl, and it ends up that she was found dead in New York. So cross-border investigation absolutely will take place, and obviously the father being the center of that investigation to find out what exactly happened and how this was then reported as an abduction, perhaps as a cover-up, to find out more detail about how this actually went down. But right now, it's just a horrible, horrible story. And I know that this is obviously something that we both share this story together because she was found in New York and obviously being from Canada.
Yeah, it is just tragic, obviously. So, Lisa, in other news here, Tulsi Gabbard, who is the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, is sounding the alarm on accusations that former Obama officials manufactured the Russia collusion narrative to undermine the Trump presidency during his first term. So, Lisa, can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, this is basically an investigation into how this narrative just came to be. And Tulsi Gabbard obviously has unearthed just evidence for a narrative that we basically knew this was made up and obviously brought against President Trump in order to discredit him and diminish him and to make sure that his presidency fails, his legacy fails, and he is not reelected. All of those kind of went by the wayside, of course, as he did come back into office after President Biden. But in the meantime, this is really damaging both internally and internationally when you look at a presidency or an administration using these political tools against another politician, against the president, to diminish him and therefore diminish the country and diminish our national security and diminish everything that we stand for. So very, very corrosive across the board. And now the details are emerging. A lot of people believe that this is not the way to use resources and time and energy right now, that we should just look forward and that the MAGA movement and President Trump's presidency is doing very well. He's going down the checklist and really fulfilling a lot of the promises he's made both in his first term and again running in his second term. But a lot of others want President Obama and his those members of his administration to be brought to justice for this narrative.
Wow, I know people are saying that people might go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a very egregious crime to create such false and again damaging narratives. And when you think about political warfare, if it's not used correctly, it can lead to war. It can lead to actions that are unintended and have all these, very, very serious consequences. So if we are saying this is what Russia is doing, if we're saying Russia is trying to, collaborate with a certain candidate, or if we're saying that China is doing a certain thing, the steps then that we take towards those rival or adversarial nations then becomes, again, part of the script. So I think it's very, very dangerous regardless of how you look at it, both internally, externally, and I do hope that there is more daylight brought onto this so that we don't do it again. The one thing I always say is, if the Democrats did it against the Republicans can do it against the Democrats, and the knife cuts both ways. It's not something that we want part of our political landscape. And if we are transparent about it now, hopefully we can prevent it from happening again in the future.
Right. Speaking of transparency, Lisa, what's the latest on the Jeffrey Epstein situation? I know we spoke about it. We spoke about it at length in our chat last week, but last I heard, Republicans are really divided on this issue, and it looks like more than half of them are wanting the files to be made public. And the DOJ, I think, originally saying nothing to see here, but last I'd heard, Trump had asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to open those files, and she's now sent a request, I believe, to the courts. So, Lisa, what's going on with this? What's the latest?
Oh my goodness. So many twists and turns. As you said, the people are completely divided, and it's not really by political affiliation. I think it's just, this is the saga that people are watching, whether you're on team this or team that. If you thought that obviously Epstein was guilty, and there is a whole long list, and both Democrats and Republicans are on it, and both will, suffer big hits because of the names that will be released. And then others who say, nope, if President Trump says that there's nothing to see here, then there's nothing to see here. And still a third camp that says, well, there probably was something to see, but who cares? This is how it goes. He's dead, she's in jail, and we will just move on from this and focus on Ukraine and Iran and Hamas and all the other, and the border and all the other big issues like the economy and so on. So yes, a lot of opinions across the board. I wouldn't be surprised if something else does come of this, but as you said, the biggest and I think most imperative word in this conversation is transparency. We do hope that regardless, the American people are at ease, believing that they did get the full story.
Yeah, and Lisa, what camp do you sit in? Are you willing to say?
Yeah, I'm kind of probably part of the third camp. I do think there was something there that had to have been. I can't imagine that, it just, but I also, I think I separate, values and politicians. I think it's an oxymoron to put the two together. And I think we can move forward. I mean, look, it would be great if we got the list, if there should be one. And if we don't, I don't think this is something where I want to put all of our energy. I do think that there's a lot of important things out there to accomplish. And maybe we can walk and chew gum at the same time and have the list and get to the important topics too.
All right, interesting there. Moving on from that, Lisa, an illegal immigrant is accused of shooting an off-duty Customs Border Control officer during an attempted robbery. And according to reports, this suspect had been previously deported, having been caught at the Arizona border in 2023, then released despite an active deportation order. So, Lisa, how can something like this even happen?
And the fact that it did is a great example as to why this has to be stopped, particularly when they are released, because it's exactly what we've been talking about for years, Jeanette, you and I, regardless of the type of crime. When they are released and it becomes inconsequential, you, they're not living in fear anymore. They're coming to do their dirty work. They are in gangs. They are in crime circles. They are pushing fentanyl. They are abducting children. They have sex rings. I mean, the list goes on and on. If there are no consequences, why would they stop? And I think this is, a horrific example, and there's so many others. I mean, young children being murdered, young girls being raped, all throughout America, because we have this issue where the border was open, they came in, and there's no way to vet them. And yes, we do have the conversation of there being great and very helpful migrants who come in and are part of the American patchwork of society. Yes, but they could also come in legally and be the same part of our patchwork of society. And that's what we are hoping for, to be a nation that does accept migrants, that does have an open attitude towards immigration, but a legal attitude towards immigration. And hopefully we will get to that.
Yeah. Okay, Lisa, there are allegations coming from the House of Judiciary Committee saying that the Biden administration used tax dollars to back protests in Israel against Prime Minister Netanyahu prior to October the 7th. So what can you tell us about this?
So what people forget is that right before October 7th, Israel society, we're talking about domestic politics inside Israel, was as divided as ever. That left versus right, and of course, Bibi Netanyahu being the right-wing candidate in office and having a lot of opposition from the left, but I would say it's about 50-50. And our government was involved in supporting the protests against him. I will remind people that under the Obama administration, there was also accusations of President Obama pushing for his Bibi Netanyahu's rival to win as the elections for prime minister. So a lot of involvement by the Democrats to make sure there's a left-wing candidate in office in Israel, which is, part of political warfare. But here we are using American taxpayer money to affect the outcome of domestic politics inside Israel. This is something that, Jeanette, you and I have talked about for a very long time in terms of the war, all of our criticisms of the war, supporting Israel in its fight against terrorism on multiple fronts in this war. Obviously, the United States supporting our main ally, our main democratic ally, Israel, in the region. But then there's all this talk about, well, I don't like Bibi Netanyahu. Okay, well, you don't have to go to lunch with him. You don't have to support him. If Israelis don't like Bibi Netanyahu, they can vote him out of office. If they don't like him, they can deal with him in a separate war court after the war is over. But when we're sitting in our seats from Canada, from the United States, from Europe, there's no opinion on domestic politics inside Israel. That is their business. What we care about is a safe, stable Middle East with a democratic Israel that is safe and secure from this existential threat of terrorism.
And speaking of Israel, Lisa, a new study by the Network Contagion Research Institute reports that major U.S. and European news outlets served as uncritical mouthpieces for Hamas narratives during the war in Gaza. And Lisa, many times you've stated that it's Hamas-run organizations that media is getting the information from regarding details about this conflict.
Right. So at the very least, their quantitative reporting about this war was taken from Hamas, from a terrorist organization that has been sanctioned by the United States as a terrorist organization. So that in and of itself is just mind-boggling. But how about the qualitative, the storytelling, the reporting that was completely against Israel and completely told the story in a shifted way, a lot of times factually incorrect. When you would watch the press briefings from the Biden White House, and you'd have all the reporters, it didn't matter what the briefing was about. At the end, you'd inevitably get questions about the war in Israel. And if you heard the questions, how leading they were, they were just accusing the Biden administration of funding and supporting a genocide, using those kinds of words and terminology about the war, it really looked like a Hamas press pool and not an American press pool. And that just comes with the territory. I lecture about this often, about how this kind of narrative, this having this kind of sympathy towards terrorism, having an anti-American point of view, it starts not just in K through 12, in high school, in college, and of course in journalism schools. I think it's very much a very systemic issue that we have to address from the root of the problem. But unfortunately, many of those who are supporting this and sponsoring this do have that point of view. Many of the professors, many of those who the newsrooms are run like this, and that's why you have left and right media in this country. I mean, it's crazy to think that you just can't turn on any news station and say, "This, I just want to get the story," not with any slant, not with any narrative. I don't care what the reporter thinks. I want to know what happened, and you just can't do that. You have to, and people judge you and they label you based on which news outlets you are consuming news from. So I mean, it's all part of the issue that we have to get to the root of, and unfortunately, it's not going to end anytime soon. But I'm glad that this report came out. We knew this was happening, and now they have quantified how bad the problem actually was and continues.
Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate having you on as always.
Thank you, Jeanette.